race by the club, and they are carrying their junior members' experience in offshore racing. So that's very good. Thank you very much for making them available. I'd like to introduce Michael Logan from the BOM. He's going to tell us all about the weather over the next few days. Thank you very much, Michael.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here again for another race. Always enjoy doing briefings in this room. It's always nice to have energy going on. The briefing tonight will be the same format as every other year. So we will start with the forecast terminology and have a little bit of a look at the services that the Bureau provides for the marine community. And then we'll get into the forecast conditions for this year's race. Is it better if I'm right next to the mic? Yes. Thanks. So forecast terminology, what we're really looking at is two key things with our forecasts, obviously the wind speeds and then the sea states. So with the wind speeds, we're looking at always forecasting a 10-minute mean for the wind at a height of 10 metres above the surface. So that's basically what we're forecasting and that's what we observe. And the graph shows you here, basically you can see that the wind is always going to oscillate. If you're looking at it in 1 minute data or even 1 second data, it obviously oscillates around an awful lot. We try to smooth that out so we represent the 10-minute mean. It's always, for the marine forecast, it's always obviously in knots. And we don't try and anticipate the squalls, but there certainly can be squalls within this where showers or thunderstorms are moving through. And we note with the wind is that the gusts are always up to around about 40% higher than the mean wind speeds. The seas and swell, there's two things to note here. One is that the marine buoys up and down the coast actually record things in the significant wave height, which is the highest 2/3 of the waves in the wave spectrum. But the forecasts are actually split into the seas and the swell. And as you're probably all well aware, the seas are locally driven by the locally wind, and the swell is generally coming from a background swell from a source a long way away. It has a longer period than the wind waves, which are the short periods. Going through the warning categories, strong winds of 25 to 33 knots, gales from 34 to 47 knots, storm force 48 to 63 and hurricane force 63 and over. It really looks like there may or may not be a possibility of a strong wind warning for the southern part of this race, just around the race start time, probably before the start of the race. It may be off the Hunter Coast the first night, but other than that, it doesn't really look like there's any chances of gales or anything above that. The wind warnings and the explanations link back to the Beaufort scale. So really, when you're looking at strong wind warnings, you still can get gusts of 35 knots up to 46 knots. So strong wind warnings still carry some pretty decent winds with them. The waves get up to 3 to 5 metres and the seas are described as rough to very rough. And as you go up through gales, storm force and obviously the hurricane force, and you basically beef all those conditions right up. Hurricane force has happened for those who are interested. We have had a few hurricane warnings off our coast, but they're very, very rare for the eastern seaboard. In terms of our services, the key forecasting service is the coastal waters. So that extends from the coastline to 60 nautical miles seaward. They're issued twice per day out to 4 days, and we always will update those as required. Can everyone still hear? That's just as good, isn't it? That's much better for me. Thanks, Justine. So for these coastal waters warnings, forecasts are always out to 4 days. Warnings and forecasts updated every 6 hours or as needed. And key introduction and where the Bureau's been going over the last few years is that all of these forecasts are now available graphically, and that's through Meta, which is on our website, which I'm sure most of you will have looked at. Just going through these coastal water zones, the southeast coast, they're in red because it actually sits obviously north of the border in Queensland, so you've got a slightly different part of the web page. Our zones are the Byron Coast, the Coffs Coast, the Macquarie Coast, Hunter Coast and the Sydney Coast. And as I'm sure you're all aware, Sydney is split into, we have the inshore, which is the local waters forecast, and then also the offshore, which is the Sydney coastal forecast. And examples up there, not for what we've currently got, that's obviously an old example, but that's what it looks like, and I'm sure most people will have seen that. Just a note on our warning summaries. A year or two back, we used to actually put a lot of the actual wind conditions within these wind warning summaries. Now the detail of those winds is actually contained within the coastal waters forecast. It just tells you where the warning zone, where the warning is actually coming from in terms of the zones. There's just an example of the MEDI graphics that are now out there. So you can pick up 3 hourly looks at the winds, and these are as edited and published by the forecasters. So this is where the text forecast comes from. And if you click over points over the actual marine area, you can actually get the temperatures, and you can actually get, if you click on get the more detailed look at that, then you can actually get the seas at each of the 3 hourly. So it's basically like a time series. Don't forget that our high seas forecasts do overlap with the coastal waters forecast. So although these cover a huge area, they do come all the way into the coastline. So they are another source of information. The Marine Weather Services webpage that we've got has all of the wind maps, including some of the computer model maps. So there's obviously MEDI, which has the forecast, the ones that the forecasters have actually touched up and improved on the computer guidance, but it also has the raw computer guidance maps, tidal predictions, sea surface temperatures, the currents, the weather and the wave maps, and the high seas forecast is all there. And there's also, within that, you can actually go through to what's called the Marine Services, like a light page. And that's just got all those products, it doesn't have all the graphics, it's just got the text products. And it's a lot more useful if you're fairway offshore and you're trying to download some of this stuff, because it's obviously a lot less download intensive. So it's an easy way to get to all the latest text forecasts without having to go through a lot of downloading. And when you're looking for marine weather services on the water, don't forget that the VHF and the HF radio services that are out there, and the MRSAT forecasts as well. So for this year's yacht race, working through the forecast, I always like to start with where we're at now, so build what's happening as we're heading into the race and then through the actual race itself. Probably the key word, and the one word for this year is probably largely westerly. It's probably the main summary for a lot of the conditions. So we're about to go into a series of quite active fronts, and they're generally going to be passing across the southeast of the continent. So the first one, which was a fairly weak trough, went through yesterday. Slightly stronger front goes through tomorrow on Friday, and so you can see it there. And then the strongest of all of them is the one that actually comes through, and you can see it approaching the western parts of the state late Saturday. It sweeps through on Sunday to Monday. And because that's the last one behind that, the winds will actually finally go around to the southwest or the southerly, further up the course. But earlier on, because there's a series of fronts coming, it holds up the winds with an awful lot of westerly and even sometimes northwest component to them, because there's more fronts coming. So we'll see that in a bit more detail. And what will happen is conditions will get progressively colder as each front comes through. So the coldest conditions are on the back of the main change that comes through late Sunday into Monday. But fortunately, most people are probably a fair way north in the course. The coldest conditions will be certainly, as you can see, certainly southern New South Wales into Victoria. A quick look at the satellite photo, so you can see the front that comes through tomorrow. We can see that out in the Great Australian Bight at the moment, so that'll start to come through New South Wales tomorrow. And the series of stronger fronts behind that, still can't really see them, they're still way down south, and they'll sweep up from southern latitudes. So what does this actually mean for the actual details of the race? I think that there's quite high confidence in what you'll see around about the start of the race time. It'll be wind with a lot of westerly component. It won't be exceptionally strong because the front from Friday will have cleared through. So it'll actually probably be on a slight decreasing trend with the westerlies. They'll be there probably around 10 knots inside the harbour, I'd say is probably a very good guess. And that's what's on the current forecasts. Waves inside the harbour less than a metre, and there's little to no background swell for the start of this race at all. So any background swell is like being half a metre or less. And because the front's cleared through, We're getting drier air coming through behind it, so it's sunny conditions are highly likely for the start of the race as well. So all in all, the forecast max temp is for 20 degrees. So westerly winds on the harbour. Looks like actually a really nice day to start the race. Really nice. Looking at the graphics for 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, you'll note that if I go back to the start of the race, so overall there's a slight lightening in the westerly winds, but as you get outside the heads there'll still be a little bit there, so probably still around 10 knots. Generally westerly, but might be just north of west. Waves less than a metre, northeast swell of half a metre or less, not much background swell at all, and remaining sunny. Although the westerly winds are going to drop out a little bit, I think, and the way that the models are shaping up for Saturday night is there'll still be a reasonable bit of amount of funneling of the northwesterlies down Hunter Valley, and that'll spill out right across the coastal water zone. So if there is going to be any wind warnings, at the moment they do look like they'll be before the race has started, for the front that comes through on Friday, and then the evening. And then there's an outside chance of something for the east northwesterlies or west northwesterlies off the Hunter coast Saturday evening. So I think there will be, it does look like, you know, and the forecast will have reasonable wind strength, 15 to 25 knots. Maybe slightly, you know, stronger offshore rather than inshore. So there will be some locally generated waves, around 2 metres, but swell will be low background swell and clear conditions, so still clear and dry. And you can see that once you get away from the Hunter funneling and north of around about Seal Rocks by 4 AM Sunday morning, the winds are certainly starting to lighten off, but there's overall a westerly component to all of those winds. So whether it's a land breeze or there's enough momentum in the whole of these systems coming through from the west just to help with those land breezes, but there'll be a lot of westerly components to all your winds, but they will get lighter. And then we're sort of between fronts on Sunday, so the next main front is approaching from the south, but for the northern parts of the course, we're very much prefrontal, so I think Sunday afternoon, winds will have a northerly component to them, and it may or may not be warm enough, and we're getting to actually start to get some local inshore sea breezes. So the forecast may not have that kind of detail on them, but there is a possibility of some inshore sea breezes Sunday. Certainly only north of Seal Rocks. And then we start to see the influence of the stronger front coming through on Monday. Definitely we'll see stronger winds in the southern parts of New South Wales and further north, but it will be strong enough to reinforce that westerly flow and bring that westerly component back to it. So it's more than just a land breeze, it's a larger scale synoptically driven system. And then Monday afternoon we can see the strongest winds certainly coming in the southern parts. And as I say, this is the last of the fronts, so what we'll start to see is that there'll be more and more southwesterly component, even southerly components of the winds as you go Monday. I've left this, at the moment the forecast for the waves and the swell, still keeping them less than 1 metre, but what we'll see from late Monday onwards is quite a decent southerly swell will start to push up the New South Wales coast. But for everyone that's obviously well north of the race course, that won't have reached those areas yet. Just a quick graphic of the ocean forecast for Saturday, so you can see where the currents are. That's on our website. Certainly I'm not an expert in that area, but those details are all on our websites. And as a summary, predominantly westerly winds. The sea state will generally be wind driven. There's very low background swell. Weather overall mostly clear, but it's obviously cool at night because it is winter. And the coldest air comes through on the back of that second front, the last front that comes through on the Monday. And just a note for if you are coming back down, what is the longer range outlook? All of the guidance is actually quite consistent, but the last front that comes through on Monday will give us quite decent southwesters up the coast into Tuesday. They'll go more southerly into Wednesday, then they'll slowly lighten off, but they'll certainly have decent strength to them. A reasonable background southerly swell will kick up from this front, so there'll be quite a decent southerly swell, certainly into Tuesday and holding into Wednesday. But by midweek, the next high pressure system comes through right across the whole of the course from Sydney up to the Gold Coast, and the winds really lighten off, and so there'll be some residual background southerly swell, but conditions will lighten right off by midweek. But there's a bit of weather on the back of that stronger front that comes through on Monday for anyone that's coming back home. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Cox now, who will treat us like the headmaster he is.
Thanks, Commodore. Very kind. Good evening and welcome to the Land Rover Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race. So I'll just be as brief as I can. I'll remind you of responsibilities you have as mariners under the Solars Convention in dealing with safety, which is one of my prime concerns, that man overboard procedures should be briefed and exercised by all yachts before this race. Crews should be fully briefed on safety equipment, and briefing should include both personal equipment and that associated with man overboard and survival at sea. Despite my friend from the Weather Bureau, who is always optimistic, I can assure you that it will be cold out there. It is the first long race of this year, and we should be very mindful of hypothermia because its results when you're at sea are very, very unpleasant. Reporting at the start. Keen boats should get there early. Mr. Kellett will be on station from 1100. Please make sure that your crew details that you pass to the starter's boat match those that you've given to the sailing office. You are all aware that we've had difficulties imposed because of the loss of our HF station in Newcastle. So I strongly recommend that you take the opportunity to call Mr. Kellett on JBW on the 6 meg race frequency after 11 o'clock to ensure that you've got good reception. I would also remind those who haven't been before that our 6 meg frequency is simplex and not the duplex frequency, and I would ask you to check that. The start will be at 1300 and there is other traffic in the harbour, and I would remind you that there are no exemptions and no exclusion zones, so for other harbour traffic, please remember that the collision regulations apply. I draw your attention to sailing instruction number 20, which provides clarity and further guidance on the use of engines. Sailing instruction 23 deals with declarations and notes that they are to be lodged within 6 hours of finishing. It also has new details for new procedures that may be followed in lodging your declarations. Please note the 6 hour limit, as non-compliance may well lead to a disappointment. I need to mention something about navigation. Recent incidents for yachts in navigation have included 2 well-founded yachts grounding, 1 meg lost at sea, and 4 people drowned, or at least missing and not found. The cause of all of these accidents has been poor navigation practices, which have included poor planning, including failure to access available data, relying on inadequate memories of previous passages, failing to report and properly repair past groundings, considering that their groundings were only soft, something that I'm not sure that I quite understand. However, inadequate study of navigation charts, or no study of them at all, lack of detailed information for diversion ports, so therefore ignoring them, reliance on the electronic chart information. So I would ask you, particularly north of the Solitary Islands, how good is the survey information? The electronic data, in my opinion, is not up to scratch, and having had the hydrographer work for me for many years, he spent little time working between Coffs Harbour and the Queensland coast, apart from a fellow called Cook and his mate Flinders. So the hydrographer has done a lot of work up there, so make sure you have a look at the charts and see how accurate they are, and know where the dangerous rocks and reefs are. In a previous race, one yacht was surprised to find a rock and the boat ended up at the bottom. So please, I do ask that you pay close attention to navigation in that area, and do remember that GPS is not as accurate as one might think. It's good for plus or minus 1 cable, and it is used by other people, and those people put errors into it. Okay, let me move on from navigation, and I've said position reporting is covered in sailing instructions 33 and 34. The pass mark is 100% for all skeds. The skeds are as follows: 1905 on Saturday on 4483, then at 0005 and 0705 daily on 4483 and at 1505 daily 6516, which again I remind you is a simplex frequency. Advise the finish line please of your ETA when point danger bears 270. Sailing Instructional 38 deals with boats retiring. Please advise JBW and the reason for retiring. I would ask you also to provide Mr. Kellett with information of the well-being on board so that when I ring up your boat, contact people, I can play songs other than the goldfish song when asked about the health of everybody on board. We would also ask that you provide your destination and your ETA. And on arrival in port, please call CYCA Control, which is Justine's telephone. I remind you of returning to home port requires proper planning, a proper reporting regime. Please involve Marine Rescue to keep them informed of where you are, as failure to do any of these things can lead to a delay in any proper SAR procedure that might need to be initiated to assist you. If you miss any of the skeds and you can't raise Justine, you also have my telephone number, and I'm happy to be rung any time throughout the race. You've all been fitted with AIS transponders, but I do note that it does say you don't have to turn them on. But for this race, we would ask that you do turn them on, as it's an assistance to us all. Noel Cornish, I understand, didn't come tonight. That's a bad one. I can list those who have been selected for spot checks: St Jude, Calibre, Big Kahuna, Coastal Course Language 1, Anger Management, and Frank. Finally, the paperwork for this race is about as bad as it's been for the 12 or 13 years that I've been here. And for those of you who are returning for the Blue Water or Hobart, Justine's been replaced by Ebenezer Kirchin. She's a very mean lady, and they will be assisting us. So we'd like to see the paperwork on time and of good quality. If it is not, and it does not meet the dates that are set out in the notice to race, then it may lead to disappointment. It will certainly lead to a fee being applied, but if it's really late, it is going to lead to disappointment. I have 32 of 64 boats on my list who owe me for paperwork, which I'd like completed tonight, where possible. Abracadabra, After Midnight, Alacrity, Aerial, Arc Equity, Maligi, The Big Kahuna, Blackjack, Black Sheep, Calibre, Celestial, Chancellor, Chinese Whisper, Siren 3, Daredevil, Dolce, Alina Nova, Espresso 4, Frantic, Elsa 3, Just Watch, Kale SWD, Carazy, Swish, Pretty Fly, One Sails, Victoire, Painkiller, The Goat, Not a Diamond, SMB, Stampede, Wild Rose. Oh, sorry, Wild Rose is not meant to be there, sorry. So all those votes, if they could clear it up. Sorry. That's all I've got to say. I wish you a safe and timely race to the Gold Coast. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce Phil Short from the Southport Yacht Club, Commodore there, and he'll tell us a bit about what we can expect to see on the Southport. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Commodore. Your camera. I'm here to welcome you all to the Gold Coast of the Southport Yacht Club. For those of you that have been to Southport in other years, this year you'll notice a few changes around our club. Our car park has all completely been refurbished. We've got a time walk when you enter the club. Also, we've got some new toys. We've got a new gym, workout in, and also we've got a waterscape party pontoon. That's something you'll be able to see and hopefully have a look at. Southport looks forward to all the skippers and crews and race officials, along with the Queen of Australia Yachting, and the major sponsors, and again, this event also by Land Rover Australia. Entering in this 30th year of the Sydney Gold Coast, on behalf of the Southport Yacht Club, wish you all a great race. After 48 hours at sea or more, you can all look forward to a warm welcome in Southport. The club bar will be open upon arrival for breakfast, lunch and dinner. We are available all day, along with any assistance you require whilst at Southport. Bronwyn, who most of you met on other previous events, the Sydney to Gold Coast have put together a copy of the latest chart, Southport Bar, to advise any build-up of sand at the entrance. And this pack also contains a DVD, a laminated copy of the Marina Birds. As you see on our charts here, you can see what Bronwyn's put together, the seaway and also the boardwalk where you come into the pub. It's something you probably need to have a look at. We look forward to seeing you all at the finish. And again, we'll welcome you back in January of 2016. As the gentleman from the Royal Geelong Yacht Club said, we're also having a sail paradise on the Gold Coast, and we offer similar services to Geelong, but it's not competition between the two clubs. I'm sure those who want to go to Geelong, we've got something special for you at Southport. Finally, if you have any questions, please ask the team on arrival. May I wish you smooth seas in the following week and good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Well, that will complete the briefing for this year. Thank you all very much for your attendance, and have a happy, safe sail going on. Look forward to seeing you up in Southport.